Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Human Endeavors podcast. Today, we are so honored to have with us Judge DaSean Jones, who's poised to bring a unique perspective to the Texas Supreme Court. Judge Jones is a dedicated public servant, jurist, and decorated Army combat veteran with over 23 years of service. Born in Georgetown, South Carolina, to Richard and Jacquelyn Jones. He's a proud HBCU graduate and advocate. He attended the Story Tuskegee University and later the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. In 2018, he became the first African American and distinguished U.S. Army combat veteran to hold the esteemed position of district judge for the 180th Criminal District Court in Harris County, Texas. He is married to Audia Jones, an attorney, entrepreneur, and legal counselor. She is a former Division I athlete and the daughter of a Vietnam War veteran and a retired educator. Judge Jones, it is such an honor to have you here with us, and I'd like to just open up the discussion by having you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in a military family.
Okay, well, it's an honor to be here first and foremost. Thank you for having me. Um, my time growing up in a military family, I think the main thing that I take away from is what most people guess. It was a lot of discipline. My dad was very how do I say, very he was a guiding father. Let me say it like that. He definitely made sure that we did what we are supposed to do, did it when we were supposed to do it, and reminded us when we did not do it. And one of the biggest things I take away from that is like today, as an adult and as a father myself, as an adult, first and foremost, I have to do what's right for myself. It's going to guide me, my wife, and my family. And then I have children I have to kind of set the conditions and set expectations for, and I have to do that, with love and kindness, but I also have to do it with some form of rigor. And that's something I take away from my dad to this day. I mean, at the time I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But as I move throughout life, I see it does have huge benefits to try to be disciplined and have some type of order to your life as you move along. So that's the biggest takeaway I can say from that. Besides traveling, now traveling that was a fun part. That was a fun part.
Good.
We traveled a lot. I lived in Germany for quite some time. I went to elementary school throughout Germany. We're also Scharnbeck, we're Baumholder, and it was great to just live in a total different country, hear a total different language, eat different food. That's, I think, where my mind started to open up at a young age to the differences of different people and learning how to be, concerned and learning how to be appreciative of just other cultures. I think that helped a lot that time living out there in Germany and other places abroad. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I hear stories of people like yourself that grew up in a military family that traveled a lot, some people speak about it a little bit negatively in terms of, I really never felt I had roots somewhere, which comparing and contrasting can be good, can be bad. But the one thing that I always appreciate and enjoy and really admire is all the experiences that you've had that a vast amount of people will never have. We hear about people that will never leave the city limits that they were born in. So for you to have all those rich experiences, I'm sure, and as you spoke about, gave you a lot of perspective that a lot of people won't have.
Yeah, one thing you just mentioned, like, I know, even growing up, many of my friends are military brats, and as we call ourselves, and they have that perspective. I kind of looked at the glasses half full, in the sense that to this day I've always believed I can get in anywhere and kind of make it happen. If I'm somewhere like in Houston, I can be in River Oaks, or I can be in Third Ward. I can be anywhere and kind of just get in and make it happen and find a way. That's the good thing I took away from, because every time we moved, I had to learn a new culture, learn what's going on here, and what's my place. How do I add value? How do I not add value? And I think that's something I've also been able to incorporate as an adult. So whether it be if I'm in the military, working as a lawyer, working as a judge, I have to get in there and figure it out and make it happen. So that's kind of the way I took it, like glass half full, so to speak. So
Great takeaway. And I think that speaks to a lot of the success that you've had and who you are to your community, to your family, being able to look at it that way and embody that as a plus versus look at it as a negative. So, man, that speaks volumes towards you and to how how valuable you are to those that come in contact with you. So let's talk, before we get into your time in the military, let's talk about the impact Tuskegee had on you. Phenomenal school, as you said, what a storied institution. Tell us how that experience, that school, the people that you met there, and what you got from that institution helped to start you on your path.
Of course. So to best explain what I got from Tuskegee, I have to kind of go back a little bit before Tuskegee. So when I was in Germany, culturally and just the way I lived, it was, a very broad perspective. We're going to see, like, the Rembrandt, see that. We're going to go to Anne Frank's house. We're going to all these different historical places in Europe. And then I come back, I moved to a place in Louisiana at the time. And at that time, I think it was David Duke, who was a former Grand Dragon or something like that, was running for governor. And so I went from Germany, other military brats, other army personnel, to like a very racist place. And it was later, like kind of around middle school. And I wasn't used to racism. I'll start there. So that was my, I guess, indoctrination back into the American society. So when I went to Tuskegee, it was like a breath of fresh air because one, it's a HBCU, so it's historically Black college, university, but the energy, feeling greeted on campus, not having to, sort of hide who I was or to be an imposter, to, everyone saying hello. So just a lot of just all the niceties of it was a shock, but it was good for my mind state, if that makes sense. I come from a place where, because of my skin color, the darkness of my skin color, things of that nature, it was somewhat of, I won't say an impediment, but it was used against me negatively. And, kids are brutal. Kids are brutal.
That's right.
And so I would say that's when Tuskegee's where I had the freedom to find myself, so to speak. I a lot of things, a lot of the burdens that I had in high school, I didn't have those anymore. So I was able to focus on, academics and, focus on making friends, having good conversations, learning more about my own history because, I didn't know a lot about my own history. And as you look out today, 2024, there's a whole anti-DEI, anti-historical movement, taking books out of schools, things of that nature. And when I was at Tuskegee, I learned so much about myself, which I think gave me a lot of pride that I didn't necessarily have before because, again, I was being degraded for so long. I didn't think I was worth much, And so that was a great time. That time there, learning about, just learn about Greek life. You learn about, SNCC, just all these civil rights movements. You learn about the history right there at Tuskegee. You learn about just people that started these schools, why HBCUs exist. I also learn about, people from Nigeria. I learned about people from the Caribbean. And I learned that there's all these different, there's a diaspora of African Americans or just Black people aren't just one type. We have Democrats, we have Republicans, people like rock and roll, they like jazz, even though a lot of times cinematically and in the media, we're narrowed or, pigeonholed as who we are as a people, but you learn it, we're such a great, diverse people. And it was good to just to leave that institution with that knowledge to kind of help me be a better person for myself.
Man, that's fantastic. Something that you said in there that really hit home and that I hope maybe in another discussion or, feel free to comment on it if you'd like. So today, looking at your experience, and you said once you got there, you felt comfortable.
Right.
And once you were able to be comfortable, you felt more competent. You felt
Right.
more able to be in the moment with the education that you were getting, with the people that you were getting it with. And I know a lot of times our children, Black children, are in schools, in areas and in neighborhoods that they may not have that comfort.
Yeah.
And instead of recognizing it's not their capacity to learn, it's the environment that they're in that makes them feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. And they don't need medication, maybe.
Right.
They may not need counseling. They may not need to be demoted to a lower grade or put in a special class.
Right.
We just don't recognize. We even sometimes as their parents,
Right.
but definitely the system itself and the environment doesn't recognize. They're just not comfortable.
Right.
So I'm really glad you said that, and shout out to Tuskegee for being that place that made you feel you could be who you were
Right.
Not a certain type of black, but
Mhm.
whatever type of black you are,
Right.
whatever type of person you are, is
Right.
good enough.
Right. Yeah, and the thing too is like even in high school, I was in AP classes, I graduated with honors, whatnot, but I didn't become comfortable. Like so academically, I was achieving, but I just didn't become comfortable with me as a person. And I think as we well know, until you become a confident person, most leaders are confident. And if you want to be a leader amongst men or women, you have to have some level of confidence. And then it could distort your opinion of yourself and cause you not to take on opportunities that you should take on, and have second guessing yourself. And it's good to to move beyond that, and that's what I try to do with my children too. And I experience the same thing. A lot of my friends and cohorts, we talk about all the time. Like our kids are at these schools and they're the only one in the class, and it's you're trying to deal with it, and it's a balance. You want them to have the best education, and for some reason, some reasons there's social economics to deal with that, and you have to try to talk them through it. It's interesting coaching that whole endeavor.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, next I'd like to jump into, and before I do, let me first thank you for your service,
Yeah,
your time in the military.
thank you.
And I'm sure everyone listening and watching that did not serve, as much as we can, understands what that means for you
Right.
to sacrifice on our behalf. So definitely thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So how did your 23 years of military service, tell us about that, and maybe where that brought you as it relates to the next decisions and the next things that we'll talk about.
Sure. So while I was at Tuskegee, I went there on an ROTC scholarship. So when I graduated, I became a second lieutenant in the Army. I chose the field artillery branch. The thing I took from the military is all the training. You learn how to plan, you learn how to train, you learn how to find issues in your plan. You learn the value of having, not one, not two, but three different courses of action, and how you're going to go through those three different courses of action. And when you start to apply those skills and that knowledge to just everyday matters, I think it makes you makes you very potent. Let me just say that, it makes you very potent. And so that my experience there, I was an artillery officer, which is combat arms. I deployed to Iraq. I think it was 0304 was the first time. It was we did combat missions, so it wasn't everything was combat oriented. I'll just say that much. And then the second time I went, it was similar. I worked with the Air Cav Brigade out of First Cav. I was there from 2006 to 2008. And, a lot of leadership issues, managing people, adults, right? Managing an adults in a crisis, right? A crisis of, we're being shot at, there's bombs, people are trying to kill you. You may not have enough food. The first time we were there, you don't have the proper amount of armor. There's a whole thing, I don't remember. They're trying to send armor over there. We didn't have enough armor. We're using sandbags. I was there during that era. And, having this, a lot of mental stress at a young age. Because I went right after college. So I must have been like 21, 22 years old. And I'm over a platoon. And it's my job. It's been, given to me as a job to bring these men back home to their families. And that's a huge burden as a young, 20-something-year-old, an old kid, right? And so you have to grow up
Yeah.
very, very fast.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to deal with a lot of different dynamics of people. Some people will like you, some people won't, but you're in charge of all these folks. And I think these experiences are things that I think have allowed me to be successful in politics. Politics is a lot of bumping of heads with folks that may or may not like you, people that have differences. But I think it's easier for me because in Iraq, some of those folks are trying to kill you. Here, you're just trying to come to just a simple solution of things. My second tour, pretty good tour. A lot of sad losses, I'll say. There was a gentleman I went to high school with. He was in a different unit, but we're in the same brigades. Brigade is like a larger unit, but we're in two separate smaller units.
Okay.
He wound up dying over there that time. He left behind a wife and two children. So that was it was kind of a sad thing. I knew these guys since we were we were like 15, 16 years old. And so that was a very sad moment. The first time we had similar occurrences, but I didn't know anyone that close. I'll just say that. So you also learn how to deal with loss, right? How to begin to cope with loss, and you know, how to different ways to deal with that stress. You know, do I work out? Do I overeat? Do I drink alcohol? Like things of that nature. Like, so the things that people deal with here, stateside, I had to start learning to deal with at a young age. I'm not saying I engaged in those things, but I had to find positive coping mechanisms when you're dealing with people who are losing their limbs or losing their life, or just for lack of better words, losing their mind because of all the stress that they're under. So that was that's where that went. Now, you know, 23 years later, it's been 23 years this year as of May. I'm still in the reserves. I transitioned from when I went to law school, I became a judge advocate. So now did a judge advocate thing, did law pretty much for the military. And most recently now I work as a military judge, which is pretty neat job where we preside over military trials. And I think all of that kind of helps with my day-to-day job. It helps me manage my family, helps me manage my work, and it certainly helps me manage politics. So.
That's good. And a lot of what you talked about, as you said, have real world applications to everyone listening.
Right.
So everyone deals with, at some point, the need to manage a set of uncertain circumstances. But typically we just have, I'm going to try this. And if that doesn't work, then I'll figure something else after, versus starting with 3 courses of action, which is a really good lesson. And also, you know, I'm really not, I don't want anyone to feel that this is a comparison to say that my stress is worse than yours or my problems are more important than someone else's. But as you talked about that, I really, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking like, you know, I've not been in a situation where a decision I make would really be life or death for a group of people, or loss of limb, where other people's families would be mourning the loss of someone because I decided to get this food versus that food, or, you know, maybe we lose money, maybe the event's not successful, you know, at work, maybe the campaign doesn't work, you know, if you're in marketing or if you're in some other, you know, maybe it doesn't work, but it's all recoverable. It's all recoupable. So man, that's really powerful to hear that those experiences are definitely real. And it puts it into perspective that although what I'm dealing with is important in some way,
Right.
put it in the right context. And that may, I don't know, for me, it reduces my stress level. As soon as you said, I said, you know what, what's the outcome? If something goes wrong, it's not that important all in all. So let me not worry so much about it. So that's very important.
Yeah, 2 things I used to always say that stuck with me. You know, sometimes you brief a commander or someone, you know, some supervisor, you know, say, so what? Like, what's the so what? Like, why should I care? And what they're basically, it sounds simple, but they're basically saying, you know, if there's not, what's the end game? If there's no end game, if there's nothing that's going to come out of this, what's the return on investment, so to speak, right? Of this decision or this course of action I'm going to take. And it'll make you think, oh yeah, what is this? So why am I doing this? So you have to think about, you know, why you're doing something. Another thing he always used to say is make a decision. Make a decision. And they would tell you make the decision, even though you'd look at someone and they're your superior. They understand when you go out and you're with your troops or whatnot, you're the one who has to make decisions. So if you can't do it now, you're not going to be able to do it out there. And your decisions, you know, they have consequences, and you need to make one. And you have to quickly make it sometimes, and be ready to deal with whatever the repercussions are, and be ready to you know, take another course of action if necessary. And I think that's pretty good in the corporate world and in politics, because sometimes you do have to be decisive. And you also have to know when not to rush to judgment, because I remember one time we were at this was the first time I was in Iraq, and they used to always say, never rush to failure, because if you fail, you may not be coming back. Which I mean, it's very consequential, right? So instead, you know, they do it's a thing, 1/3 to 2/3. Take 2/3 to plan, 1/3 to execute. You take more time to plan than you execute, which I think is just things I incorporate now. And I think they work. I mean, I think they work, and I think they've benefited me and my family pretty well. And you know, I thank the military for that experience. I think it was great training. You know? So.
I love it. And I definitely take lessons that you've shared. I try to read a lot, so I've read David Goggins, I've read
Oh,
Jocko
yeah.
Willink. Those are two people that stand out where they took their military experience and applied it to real world.
Yeah.
I listen to Chris Voss, who talks about negotiating, and
Yeah.
he did it for the FBI. So I
Yeah.
used someone else's high risk,
Mhm.
high consequence experiences, the lessons they learn,
All right.
and apply it to our quote unquote lower risk, lower
Mhm.
uh, consequence
Right.
day-to-day situation. Should I go left? Should I go right? Well, the worst
Right.
case, maybe you get to work a little bit late, but
Right.
exercising those puts you in a position where when you do get in a high stakes, you've
Mhm.
already you got those mental processes worked out. So good stuff.
Yeah. Right.
So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about what your legal career was before you became a judge. Tell us how you progressed through that, because I know a lot of people, I'm sure, certainly a lot of people that I know that will listen have aspirations to move through a career, uh, a legal career, and potentially becoming a judge. So talk about what happened in your career before becoming a judge.
Yeah, sure. Once I passed the bar, so I took the bar with July 2011. Passed, I think November, I found out I passed. I was already in court working with somebody. And actually, people started texting me, you passed. I'm like, think about what are they talking? I get them random texts, you passed, because people paying attention, right? I was like, oh, the bars, right? And so I went out on my own. I was a little bit daring. I was an older student because I spent 8 years in the military. I was an older student. I wanted to kind of, chart my own course. They call it hanging your own shingle. So that's what
Mm,
I did. I took taking a summer class about employment law. So in the military, we didn't really have employment, litigation, or you're told to do something, you go do it, and you
that's
be
right.
quiet, whatever. So I learned about this interesting thing called employment law. Gender, age, race, religion, nationality discrimination, whistleblower cases, things of that nature. All these rights that employees have. And I kind of got into employment law, and I got into personal injury and deceptive trade practice law. Got my cases. Obviously started making some money, which was good. Had a good reputation, getting a lot of referrals, and then trying cases. I wanted to try cases. It was always my goal to you know, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to do it the best that I can. And I went, when other people, in my own opinion, they're going on vacation to Jamaica and all this other stuff the first 2 years, I was using all my money for CLEs. I'm paying $1,500 to go to this CLE, $2,500 to go to that CLE, because I wanted to be good at what I did. And I wanted, my work to mean something. And because that's what it was in the military. I had good evals, had a good name, and I just wanted to make sure I kept at this point in the civilian world, a good brand, so to speak. And so I did that, and was doing great, doing wonderful. And then I bumped into a judge that I thought was just so unfair, and it really irritated me. And so I decided to run against that judge. It's not actually the judge that I wound up um, winning the election against. It was a different judge, but that's what pushed me to even run. I just found the judge that I felt was abusing their power. I thought that they were very unfair. I thought they were treating the litigants very unfairly, and I didn't like that. As a person who, at a young age, was the platoon leader for MLRS battery, which is like these launchers and rockets that we had. You can basically blow up huge areas of land with them. I just always had a disrespect for people that abuse power. Probably because being in the military, I saw a little bit of that, but it was always shunned, right? So to see someone who was I didn't think was really even a good person to wield power and then abuse it. I was offended by it. And so I didn't even think I would win, but I had the money, so I started running, and I got steered another direction to run for a different seat actually, and then wound up winning that seat. So
Man, that's what an awesome story. Not to overlook everything that you said up into the last part, but man, what an awesome example to say when you see something or someone doing something that you feel shouldn't be done. A lot of us are presented with a few options. One, complain, which
right,
doesn't change anything.
can't change anything.
Two, yeah, in this case, you were in a position to absolutely replace and push that person out to do the job that you think should be done better, which you ultimately took that course. And sometimes we may not be, we may be a litigant and feel,
Right.
well, I can't be a judge,
Right.
but I know that I've been treated unfairly.
Right.
And I'm definitely, and I'll hold some of these questions until we get a little bit further down, but I think that's where it's very important for everyone to key in, because 99.9% of the people have a problem with the justice system, have seen it be used unfairly and authority be wielded unequally,
Right.
but feel that, well, if I'm not an attorney, or if I can't run for judge, if I can't replace him, then I guess I'm just stuck with the decisions he makes. And I'm just stuck with that person sitting on the bench. And that's definitely something I'd like to talk about here in just a bit. So I just wanted to put a mental pin in my mind and let everybody know. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can replace and get more involved in some of the things that you're looking to do. So as a trial judge, what exactly do you do? What are your duties, your roles, and responsibilities?
So I work as a criminal district judge. So I work in my court is designated for criminal cases, felony cases. So let's see, possession of controlled substance, aggravated assaults, sexual assaults, homicide, capital murder, fraud cases, forgery cases. Those are the sort, the big crimes. It's just it's the highest trial court you can be in, as a district court in the state of Texas. So we try those cases, preside over those cases. Sometimes they plea out, sometimes they go to trial, sometimes they're dismissed. It's my job essentially to, one, manage the docket. Presently, we have about 1,200 cases. At one point, I had about maybe 1,800 cases. So we've got, I think once it might have been at 21 at one point. We've got the cases down a lot. So you're trying to make sure, one, you have a manageable docket. Two, it's a balance of making sure things go to trial, but not rushing people to trial, right? Because oftentimes what I've seen is there are some judges, they'll rush you to trial knowing that your lawyer's not ready, you're not ready. It's more so about, let's move this docket, right? Moving the docket in and of itself, it's a balancing act. You can move the docket in a way that harms people, or, you can move the docket in a way that allows people to have justice. Like they have all the discovery. They've been able to ask the right questions of their family members before they go forward. Because a lot of times in my cases, you might be facing 5 to 99 years. And so that's not something you want to, if it was you, would you want to be rushed per se? And it doesn't mean go slowly, but it means, remember that rigor and discipline we're talking about with my dad. Sometimes I have to apply that to the lawyers. Like, hey, this is the deadline. This is when you're going to do it. And we're going to get it done because we have to move this docket. One of the main things I do on a daily basis, we'll get new cases and I have to set bonds. There's criteria for bonds, and I follow the criteria. It's in the code, and you follow that criteria. There's still arguments of counsel. One of the things I pride myself on, and I think I've heard it from both sides, state and defense, is I listen. Now you may not get what you want, that's right, but I'm gonna let you speak, and I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna try to give you as much opportunity to speak as reasonably possible, to make sure that, sometimes you get a lawyer that doesn't get all out the first time, or they might forget, because we're all human. So I'll say, counsel, anything else? Any in response? Anything else you guys want to put on the record? I want to make sure that they're well heard before I make any decision. And then sometimes if it seems like they might even need more time, and we don't have to rush the judgments, so to speak. Let's say it's a Tuesday. All right, counsel, I give you till Thursday. If you guys want to brief the matter, you have to about Thursday at 5 o'clock to get to, turn your brief in. I'll read through your briefs, and I'll finally, give you a decision on Friday. That's mainly what I do. And I try to do it. I try to be fair, try to be impartial. And I think I'm very decisive. I think, my word is my word. When I say something, I mean it. I don't, bite my tongue, so to speak. And if it's time to move along, it's time to move along. I hold people to the fire. For instance, if you had a case for, let's say, a year, 2 years, you're set for trial on Monday. We bring you in on Wednesday, and I ask you if you're ready, and you tell me you're ready. You got till probably that Friday or Saturday to say, hey, I don't want to go to trial, because that Monday you're going to trial. I expect professionals in my court to handle things in a professional manner, and that's what we do. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's the balance of it.
You mentioned, I just want to draw a couple of corollaries based on how you explain your role, your duties as a trial judge, a little bit in comparison and contrasting to the example you said earlier. I heard two things that if I was an attorney, would appreciate, and certainly if I was a litigant would appreciate. One, an appropriate pace. fast
Right.
enough that it doesn't drag out. And I'm sure that may result in excessive fees or all kind of other consequences, but not too slow or not too fast that you feel like you can't prepare.
Right.
So appropriate speed and the ability to be heard, which I'm sure from both sides, it's like, hey, I had a good case, or
Mhm.
I've got things
Right.
to say, but maybe quote unquote, the judge felt he already knew what I was going to say before I say it.
Oh yeah.
So in addition to those two things, or maybe expanding upon, what other things would you say as a lesson learned from that unfair judge or others that may be like that unfair judge, you try to make sure that you maintain that fairness, that impartiality to where everyone, whether it goes my way or whether it didn't, they say, listen, I got a fair shot. I had a chance and I took it. And I don't feel like I was hamstrung by the judge itself. It might have been the facts, it might have been some other circumstance, but inside of that courtroom, everything was a square deal.
So what happened? One of the issues that happened with that judge is kind of silly. I think some people will laugh. So, like I mentioned before, when I moved back to the United States, I went to Louisiana, and at the time, the style of clothing for young urban men was Girbaud jeans and a white T-shirt, so mostly pressed with an iron, right? So when I was in court, there were some guys. They weren't even my clients. It was someone else's clients. They came in there and they had on some jeans, and the jeans were like kind of starched, and then the shirt was a white T-shirt. And I'm right now I'm 45. This was a couple years back, but so I'm much older than these guys. So I'm like, oh, this little. I'm thinking in my mind based upon where I come from, where I've been. Oh, the style has come back, right? And they were defendants, right? But it was a misdemeanor court, so it wasn't nothing too serious. But they're defendants, and they had that style of clothing on up. And that's my mentality took me to a time when I was a kid. Okay, I know what this is. The judge was on the bench, was like, "How dare you come in my court in underwear?" Regarding the t-shirts, the white t-shirts. And I was, you know, kind of blown away. And that's when you start to see that. Well, one of the things I used to say when I ran the first time, we have a lot of people on the bench that are presiding over people that aren't even from a culture they understand or care to understand. And that's what I saw there. And I'm sure they probably were confused too. They're like, underwear, this is what we wear. And so, and again, there was, you couldn't see any body parts. I think we've seen plenty of people in white t-shirts. I mean, if you look, even, athletes, people on television, famous people, just a white t-shirt and some jeans. It wasn't anything bad to me, right? And so that cultural, I guess, indifference or lack of care for how someone else might conduct themselves, that drove me. That's one of the things that drove me. So the first thing to answer your question, when you come to my court, I'm not trying to judge you on like, do you have a Rolex, a Timex? That doesn't matter, right? And what I try to do is generally most of these cases are going to be based on elements. And you look at the elements of, so if it's a bond, there's elements under Chapter 17 here in Texas. You look at those elements. I'm looking at the elements. I'm not trying to look at the person. I'm trying to look at the elements. And if you even think about looking at the person or some other thing, you got to refocus back to what are we here for? We're here for the law. We're not here for a moral judgment or my personal judgment. We're here to see if it meets the measure of the law. And that's my guideline. So for every case, there's going to be, basically boxes you check for, whether it's bond, whether it's a writ. There's all these boxes or elements you have to check. When we go to trial, there's going to be elements that the state has to present to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And they're going to go over those elements with the jury. They're going to have to prove those elements. And that's what you stick to. And if it doesn't meet the elements, it does that, then you're not following the law. And that's my biggest thing. Let's follow the law. For instance, even today, I had an attorney come in, not on purpose, but in his order or whatever, he was asking me to sign something, and it stated the court had already done something, right? But I hadn't done it yet, and he knew I hadn't done it. I'm like, well, I can't sign this because this hasn't been done yet. He's like, yeah, but you're about to do it. I said, but I haven't done it. So I'm not signing my name on that because that hasn't been done. So this document isn't true. Does that make sense? And I think, you won't be perfect all the time, but you do your best to just follow the law. And if you follow the law, I think oftentimes you'll treat people with dignity if you just follow the law. When you start thinking about your own personal issues and things of that nature, that's when you start to harm people. That's when you start to, carry things out in a way it shouldn't be, particularly in felony court when we're dealing with, people are alleged, right? They have been convicted, alleged to have committed some very heinous crimes. And so it can be difficult, mentally to try to keep your feelings out of it, but you have to. Otherwise, you're not following the law. And that's the biggest thing. Just follow the instructions, follow the law. And again, something I took from the military. If it's a lawful order, I accept the lawful order and I move forward. And that sort of discipline of sticking to that, I think definitely I leverage from my time serving the Army.
Man, phenomenal lessons there. And I want to pivot just a little bit before we get into what your next aspirations are. Just step back and talk personally. Um, First sort of personal question is, how do you take that and how helpful is the ability to see people, I guess maybe inside out, based on facts, not emotions, based on data, not impressions, and give people the opportunity to present themselves regard or without looking at them and saying, oh, I already know who you
Right.
are, what you're about. How does that help you as you just go about around in your personal life, meeting people, family,
Um,
friends?
I feel like for me personally, I think it gives me balance. Just my life has been one where I personally feel I've been judged, it's not a lot, but by my appearance, I have the what do you call it, RBF. I have a little bit of RBF, as they say. I was in the military. My dad was in the military. I think I'm a nice person, but I do have RBF. I acknowledge it. I understand that, and so understand based upon my phenotypical aspects, my height, my skin color, whatever. People might think certain things if I was to be in the park at night with a hoodie, right? And because I've experienced that for so long, uh, I feel like you know I balance it out by me trying to be fair to other people, if that makes sense. I feel like I find balance there. Even when I was in the military, when I left active duty, I went to the reserves. I went to a unit that was predominantly, not a very diverse town. It was my reserve unit. I have to go out there. Was it once a month, 2 times a week? And there weren't a lot of minority officers. And at the time, the rank was here on your chest and here on your hat when you're walking outside. And many people walk by me like, hey, Sergeant, hey, Sergeant, hey, Sergeant. Mind you, I was a captain at the time. The rank is here, the rank is here. And, in my mind, the only reason you're calling me Sergeant is because you just assume, maybe because of my age and, I'm African American, that I'm a sergeant. Literally, the rank is here and here. You can't miss it, right? And it got to the point where I'm like, what's going on here? And you have to realize that people have these biases and prejudices, not subconscious, right? And again, for me, because of how I feel I've been treated, I feel like I get some balance and just trying to be as fair as not perfect, but as fair as possible to people as I can be. So.
Understood, understood. And maybe even taking it one step further and maybe just lightening it a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
based on someone seeing you, making those assumptions. What is something that most people probably wouldn't know about you? Even, either through I've known you for a while and never knew that, or I've looked at you. Oh, Judge Jones. Oh, no, I can tell you exactly. He'd never be into this, or that'd never be him. What are some of those things or one of those things that
That's
people wouldn't
that's
know?
that's a challenging question. Let me think. Let me think. So okay, so when I'm in my civilian role, most people don't realize I'm in the military. And then, when I tell them I'm a lieutenant colonel, they're shocked, right? That's a huge shock for a lot of people. Uh, I think sometimes when I'm in the military role, I tell them that I'm a state district judge, they're kind of shocked, right? So I guess the level of duty that I've acquired in life on both sides, right? Because there's two different worlds. Just from a personal standpoint, probably that I like Star Wars, right? Like I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm a Star Trek fan. I love sci-fi. When I went home, I watched C-SPAN and I watched what was it? Those military blunders was one of my favorites on History Channel. And then I think one thing people often get me confused for. I like sports, but I wasn't a huge sports person. I like combat sports. So my favorite sports, I love combat sports. But I'll get random people to come up to me, oh, did you see the game last night? And I'm like, no. And they're like shocked. Like, what do you mean you didn't see the game last night? Like, there's like this idea that I work out, right? So I have like somewhat of a build. Now I'm not a huge person, but I guess I look like I would be into like certain sports. And so I guess generally that'll be it. Other than that, maybe that I listen to certain podcasts. I listen to some really nerdy podcasts. I
Okay.
don't think
Okay. So question about Star Wars,
Yeah,
and I'm a huge Star Wars fan as
okay.
well, but not to the point where I would consider myself to be,
You're not going to the convention?
I would consider going to one.
Okay,
I have
okay.
not been to one, but I would consider
Yeah.
my prejudgment is that
Mhm.
there's a couple of camps. There's a Star Wars where I enjoy it, love the story, and would definitely watch it. And even all the auxiliary shows and series,
Right.
which I'm currently doing
Mhm. So
with
you watch the
Acolyte.
acting.
I'm watching
Yep.
Acolyte. I watched
Yep.
Clone Wars, the animated. I mean, loved
Yep.
all of that.
Yep. Yep.
But I feel there's a genre of Star Wars folks that we get too overly critical
Okay.
of, hey, this one didn't do justice by, I read the book and that's not true to character. So how do you feel about
Mhm.
the three sets? You've got the original set, you've got
Mhm.
that middle set of Star Wars,
Mhm.
which were kind of the prequels, episode one,
Right.
two, three,
Right.
and then the final three. How do you feel about those in terms of, I like them, this was good, this was, let me get your opinion on that.
I mean, for me personally, so I'm not the they didn't do this justice. I read the book guy. I'm more of a I like it because those movies to me it's like it's a good time, it's adventure, it's it's allowing me to think. And then the first set I sat with probably with my dad, the second set with my siblings, and now the third set I'm with my family. So it's kind of like it's a family thing, right? Like it's
Yeah.
something that they'll hope, if they keep going, and my son will probably sit with his kids, and
Yeah.
it kind of creates this connectivity between us that we can still appreciate. Like the same way in Houston, you have the grandfather loves the Astros, the father loves the Astros, the grandson loves the Astros, right? I look at it as a form of connectivity within American culture that I think is important. So I like them all. I mean, I
Okay.
think they're all great. I'm loving Acolyte right now.
Yeah.
There was I think one episode I was like, what's going on here? But the rest of it I thought was pretty good. So
Yeah. 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 I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm of the camp that I thought all the Disney series were good,
mhm.
and even the extra movies. Like I really enjoyed Rogue One.
Okay, yeah, that was a good movie. Yep.
Han Solo was
Mhm.
okay, but
Mhm.
I mean, and I've watched it multiple times.
Mhm.
I typically fall in line with that group.
Right.
Okay, well, interesting, good stuff.
Yeah.
So let's get to really where I sincerely hope
Mhm.
this happens, and I hope that anyone watching, listening, can be a part of making this happen. Right now, you're running for Texas Supreme Court. If you could tell us why you're running and why it's important to you and to Texas,
Yeah.
the citizens of Texas, that you be in this position.
So I'm running for Texas Supreme Court place two. That election. So I won the primary. I had a primary opponent, and I was able to win that in March. I became the official Democratic nominee for Texas Supreme Court place two. I think it was March 5th when I got that news. And so now I move on to November to the incumbent to challenge him. The reason I'm running first and foremost is that understanding that, I've lived a life where I feel that you should always try to, do more. Not too fast, not too slow, but when you're ready, do more. And in that, I've also often been told when I went to law school, I was told you shouldn't go to law school for this or that reason, whatever. You shouldn't go out on your own for this or that reason. You shouldn't try to become a judge for this or that reason. I've always had a bunch of naysayers, for whatever a reason. And my message to most folks, if you know and you believe that you're qualified to do something, you should just go ahead and do it. If you sit around and listen to naysayers all your life, you will never probably become anything. You will do nothing, become nothing, and everyone else will be happy and comfortable, right? So it's also my desire to make people uncomfortable. And what I mean by that, presently, all 9 justices in Texas, there are no African Americans whatsoever. Yet Texas, population-wise, has the most African Americans. We have more African Americans than any other state. I think at this point it's 3.9 million. We have more African Americans than any other state, population-wise, not percentage-wise. Um, and I think it's time that we have some diversity on those seats. The reason we need to have that diversity is because we are a diverse state. I mean, even though I think the broader media portrays Texas as like, little bit behind the times or what have you, from what I've heard from my friends. You know, we've got a huge Hispanic population, largest amount of African Americans in the country. We have Vietnamese, we have all sorts of people here in Texas, right? But we don't have all sorts of representation. And if you look recently at a lot of the rulings that are coming out of not just the Texas Supreme Court, but just the Supreme Courts nationally, there appears to be, I mean, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but just look at the rulings, like an opportunity that's being used right now to roll back a lot of civil rights progress that's been made. We have issues right now. If you look in South Carolina, just had an issue with the gerrymandering. The United States Supreme Court said that was fine, no big deal. You have the issue here in Texas and in other states with the abortion rights, reproductive rights, where they had the first case, and then, unfortunately, the lady had to leave Texas to go take care of that. We just had a more recent case where they're supposed to, the hope was to actually define what would be medically necessary procedures for folks. And that became like a whole gaslight opinion. They didn't really even answer that question. And to me, again, something I learned from the military, you have to be decisive. And there's another thing, not to say that the Supreme Court is in charge per se, but they, for as far as the legal stuff, they are kind of in charge. When in charge, be in charge. And when people are asking you a question, you need to answer that question so people can make decisions for themselves, not leave them in the dark. And so now, doctors and a lot of these women are still afraid, hey, you might get arrested, you might lose your license because they didn't make a final decision. Now, all decisions should be based on law. I'm not trying to, telegraph a decision or forecast a decision. I just think that there was an opportunity there that was obviously missed. And I think that opportunity is missed because, again, similar to the judge who I originally wanted to run against, these people do not come from these communities. They're not face the same issues, nor do they care about these issues. And in Texas, one of the biggest things I see is that a lot of the things that are decided, you'll hear the executive branch make mention of, this is what I feel. Then suddenly the judicial branch will have a ruling that seems to marry with that feeling, right? So it's would appear that, one branch is ruling the next branch. And again, a lot of the folks, once let's say one of them steps down, the governor's going to appoint them. So to believe that there's not some type of kinship there that's going to cause them to rule a certain way, I mean, it's easy to figure out that's going to happen. In a sense, they're all in cahoots, right? So we need some diversity there. We need some diversity of thought, diversity of mind. I believe I'm more than qualified. There was a notion that was actually put out by my primary opponent. Oh, well, he's just a criminal judge. Wait a minute, buddy. The last case I tried was a whistleblower case for a nurse, right? Under Nursing Practice Act. Most of my work when I was a practicing lawyer, I did DCPA work, I did personal injury work, I did some contracts, I did a lot of Title VII, a lot of Chapter 21 Texas Labor Code work. Those are all civil cases. So, again, similar to my experience just growing up as a child in America, I was kind of pigeonholed as far as like, what are my capabilities? What can I handle? I'm able to handle those types of cases. I'm smart enough to be able to deliberate in those type of cases. And to be honest, I always like to say, when it comes to the Constitution, I've raised my hand in more times than any other present justice in consequential times to serve my country and to serve the Constitution. These people have never done that. So to tell a decorated Army United States veteran that, hey, you're good enough to go die for your country, but you're not good enough to come represent us in the Supreme Court, I think is unpatriotic. And it's funny, it's coming from the people that claim to be, the biggest patriots, right? Every time you look up, I always tell people so when I ran in 2022 for my second run, they spent about, we looked at it, there was some PACs and whatnot, like $2 million to run all these ads against me. They did a deep fake. This guy had an AI voice and he was doing all this stuff and he was releasing people from jail, and it vilified my character, right? I still won. We're actually in a lawsuit about that now because they filed a lawsuit they want to rerun the election, right? And what I find interesting about that is through all the vilification, one thing I noticed that these hardcore patriots never say is that, hey, he is a United States decorated Army officer, Bronze Star Medal recipient. They never mention that in a single article, right? And these articles are supposed to be poised to discuss who I am as a person, right? And so you can't say you're trying to do anything but vilify me and degrade me if you never mention the whole of me. Because anyone that knows me, I am Army strong. Like, and let me just put this out there. I'm not endorsed by the Army, whatever's just part of my life. But to not put that as part of my life when I'm a decorated veteran. So is my sister, my brother, and my dad was also a veteran. It's just impossible not to mention, right? So that's how I know that this is a lot of propaganda that's been used in the media against me. And that's another reason I want to run. It's we just have some people here in this state, I believe, are they're not good people. I just don't think they're good people. I don't think they care about everyone. There's a lot of animus and vitriol against certain communities, particularly against Harris County and Houston. And then another thing I mentioned, I think when I looked at the site the other day, there's about 2,900 judges in Texas. Out of those judges, there's less than probably like 10 elected African-American males in the state of Texas, second largest state in America. I work in the third largest county in America. Let's say 5 African-American male judges in the third largest county in America. And then, to your credit, 3 of those are members of Kappa Alpha Psi, by the way, but that's a whole other thing. But I think it's a fight worth fighting. I think they need a new voice. I'd imagine I'll be the first justice to listen to hip hop, the first justice to understand the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef. We're moving into a different part of society. I'm not saying that those things in and of themselves are important, but it's important to have that diversity and inclusion of all people who are paying taxes and doing what they're supposed to do as Americans here in the great state of Texas. And I think it's time. It's definitely time. It's past time. Well past time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you've said several times, as important, that is important for us to recognize is summarizing it, representation matters. So when you're in a position where it's important that the next phase of your life is in someone else's hands, it is extremely important for us to recognize that whoever's making that decision needs to understand what it means to you if it goes left or if it goes right. You talked about in the military, having a civilian come in and make a decision around, what we're going to do on the battlefield. I have no context. I'm not in the military. So that would make no sense for me to do that. Someone has to be, quote unquote, somewhat in your shoes or understand who you are and what it means to you, what the outcome of the decision I make is going to have. Same thing out here in, civilian life is a judge who doesn't know who you are walking in. They're going to prejudge you when you come in. They don't understand culturally. You mentioned a guy called a white t-shirt, underwear. So I'm already facing someone who's going to decide the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years of my life, my children's life, my family's life. He has no interest and no understanding of who I am and what's important to us. So, man, I salute you for having the courage, having the wisdom to know that you got to be the change that you want to see. Two, having the courage to say, I will be the one that will run if no one else will.
Right.
So I definitely want you to speak next on how anyone listening or how anyone who knows someone that's not listening can help you and your cause. What is required of those individuals? What can everyone listening do?
Yeah, that's great, and it's important. So first, we're raising money. My website is www.DaSean. DaSean is spelled D. I'll do a Delta Alpha Sierra Echo Alpha November DASEAN for FORTEXAS.com. DaSean for Texas. DASEAN is the spelling of DaSean FORTEXAS.com. You can donate there. You can also go on there and say, hey, I want to volunteer. Two of the biggest things I think right now, donations, because we can't operate without money. There's a lot of marketing costs. My opponent, he's going to get a ton of money from his people. They're gonna make sure the coffers are fat and full. So we have to raise that money to do marketing. Another thing is, anyone that has any type of social media presence, I look at it differently. These days, a lot of people on social media, they're on Instagram, they're on podcasts, they're on, like how we are on Zoom. These things, they have great value in today's society, right? Anyone that may have a podcast, anyone that has like, whether it be video or just audio, anyone that may have time to just talk to me on your Instagram, on your TikTok, sharing all my posts, liking my Instagram, just liking and sharing, just getting the word out. That's huge. And it's really not that hard to do these days, you know. It's you don't even have to get off the couch, right? You can do it from your phone. So that's important. Anyone that would like, so we're going to be doing a fundraiser. We're doing one in Dallas. We're doing a fundraiser in Dallas. We're also going to do a fundraiser, even though it's outside of the state. We're scheduled to do one in Georgia, in Atlanta. It'll probably take place around my birthday. We'd like to do one in DC. If you believe that you could orchestrate a fundraiser wherever you are, I'd appreciate it. And the reason I say that, we keep saying, however Texas goes, kind of the United States goes. Before, the whole thing with immigration arose, Texas was already working on that kind of stuff. Before the whole thing with the reproductive issues arose, Texas was already working on that kind of stuff. Texas is kind of leading the march in rolling back the civil rights movement, right? When I say for civil rights, I'm not talking about just Black people. I'm talking about all civil rights for all people, right? Your voting rights, your reproductive rights, the whole gerrymandering idea, this whole idea of anti-DEI, getting people out of schools. We're not going to teach this. We can celebrate the Confederate folks, but we can't celebrate the people that are trying to fight against the Confederacy. It's crazy, right? Very one-sided, and they're doing it nationally. And I keep telling some people I feel like they're on the sidelines. Now is not the time to be on the sidelines. I think I get great inspiration and hope by reading the stories of folk. And again, they're trying to take us out of schools, right? But reading the stories of folks that did it before us in the 60s and the 50s, even reading the people that did it internationally, like Lumumba, things of that nature, reading about people that did it internationally, it gives me hope. But I'm able to go back and see what they did and kind of, hedge forward. I feel like right now people are so on the sideline. I would hate to kind of see what are people going to look at when they look back. And when I say people, I mean our children. What are they going to look at 30, 40 years from now and say, what did they do? Dance on TikTok. And there's more to having fun. I don't feel like we're engaged right now. I'm just going to be honest. Maybe I'm missing it, but I just know when I look back and I see the stories of Medgar Evers, I see the stories of Robert Abernathy, of course, MLK, Malcolm X, and all these other folks, Fannie Lou Hamers, and all these folks and what they did and what they're willing to do. I'm not sure if we have that same energy. And it's like we were able to get to this point, and now we're kind of just relaxing. It's like the guy that gets all buff and goes to the gym. He's like, well, I'm here, and stops working out. You go to fluff, right? We got to keep working, and I think we have the mind, we have the minds. We have people that are healthy, they're capable. I think we could potentially have the energy. I just don't, for some reason, we don't have the focus. I don't know why, but we're just losing the focus. And while we're unfocused, again, there's a whole movement. We're going to push these books out of the school. You can't teach about this. You're not going to learn about that. Imagine if I come back from Germany and not known about the civil rights movement, not known about these things. I wouldn't have been inspired to get to the point I am today. I don't know. Who knows who I would be, right? Because I wouldn't have had that inspiration. And it's sad, and I think we need to fight for it. This is part of that fight to make sure we're included. In my office, when you come to my office, I have a picture of Thurgood Marshall up, because I was able to learn about Thurgood Marshall. Yeah. So he inspired me. That's one of my inspirations, right? I'm not sure whose picture I'll be putting up in 30, 40 years, to be honest. I'm hopeful, but I'm careful. Yeah. And I say that to say anyone, if you have any idea that I have not even mentioned, simply go to my website, go on there and say, here's how I believe I can help you. We're going to respond, and we need all the help we can get. It's a huge state, 254 counties. Harris County alone is just my county. Before we get to the other 253 counties, bigger than most states. Yeah. And I have to travel this state. I have to put gas in cars. I have to go to hotels. I've been to places where, what do they say? The lady said, "Are you a Negro?" I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." So there's still places like that out here. Wow. They're far. We have our urban structures, right? We have our urban center points. We have our Dallas, our Houston. We have like San Antonio's and things like that. But there's some parts out here where it's got a little sundown town vibe to it, right? And I have to go to those places. I have to talk to people and encourage them to vote, and it's difficult. But it would be a lot easier with the help of people. And you don't have to live in Texas. If you do live in Texas, you can vote, right? If you live in Texas, remember to vote for DaSean. I'm easy to find. There's not going to be another DaSean on the ballot. in November 5th, 2024. I'll be right there under the railroad commissioner. So it'll go governor, it goes like governor, couple of folks, railroad commissioner, and me. I'm like on the first page. DaSean, easy to find, right? So you can vote for me. If you live in Texas, you encourage other people to vote for me. If you don't live in Texas, you can donate. If you don't live in Texas, you can say, hey, I believe I can get so many people together. We'll do a fundraiser. I'll come out there. We'll do the fundraiser, talk to you guys, and we'll push for democracy, right? That's what we're going to keep doing. So anything people can think of, I'm more than open to. But the main things, got to get the word out, got to get the word out, got to get the word out, and got to raise money. And my name is DaSean Jones.
Yes, sir. So I will mention, so this podcast is the Human Endeavors podcast, brought to you all by the Marcus Peter Blakemore Foundation, but we're adjacent to Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Obviously, so I do want to mention, officially, Kappa Alpha Psi doesn't endorse any one candidate, but it is important, and it is 100% our mission. Right now, there's a big push from the Grand Pole March to get people civically engaged.
Right.
And Judge Jones, it means the world to us to be able to give yourself the opportunity to at least share with everyone who you are from your mouth, not from a commercial, not from an ad, not from an opponent. So that really is what I'm definitely excited about, for sure. And you talked about, why is it that people aren't engaged? And I think back on maybe the history of our right to vote, and it goes from, you don't have a right, first of all.
Right.
Then when you do get it, it's a partial right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have full rights like everyone else. Then
Right.
you finally get rights. And then I understand, once you have the same rights as me, the risk of the balance of power shifting is present. So now, and I'm in marketing professionally, so I understand what it's like and the importance of now being able to convince us that it no longer is important for you to have what so long, or not too long ago, rather, was important for us to make sure that you didn't have.
Right.
Because there is a lot of power in that vote, and understanding how important it is to have someone that looks like you in a Supreme Court position within your state as these major issues are being brought up. So it makes sense why people are disengaged. It's sad, but that's because we're just the power of suggestion.
Right.
I spent so long telling you that it's important you not have it. Once you finally get it, since I don't want you to have it in the first place, it's important for me to convince you, don't use it. So, we definitely, hopefully, can wake up out of that trance.
Yeah.
So I do want to kind of close just by having you tell us, a little bit about life off the bench. What do you do outside of military, family? What happens after you kind of, take the robe off, maybe take the uniform off, and maybe are able to be what, quote unquote, we would say, a normal person like we all enjoy once we take off whatever hats we wear.
Yeah. So for me, my day, I usually start, there's a couple of guys, we go run. We always do like two and a half mile run, push ups, sit ups, workout, just kind of encourage each other, get the day started, get the blood pumping, flowing, and that little bit of camaraderie in the morning. One thing I'll say I missed since I left active duty was just the camaraderie, just being around the whole spirit of corps, the idea of it was everyone, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. We were all together, just out there, just supporting one another in the morning, getting each other pumped up, and it was a great way to start the day. So I kind of continue that tradition now. Obviously, I go to work. When I get off work, just engage my kids, checking, seeing how their days went. Trying to learn. I'm fathering and learning at the same time. It's probably the most rewarding job I've ever had, but it's the one that gives me the most anxiety because it's the one I don't want to mess up.
Yes.
Because that has consequences, right? And so and then just taking my kids to their activities. And then I'm also obviously a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. This weekend we have a gala. That's going to be great. Get to go hang out at the gala, bump into a lot of different brothers there, and just just fellowship, good cheer, and what's some other travel. I love to travel. I like beaches. I mean, sorry, if there's not a beach, I'm probably not going to go. We might. So last year we went to Thailand. We had a great time. The year before that, we went to Tulum. We usually hit the beaches. We're probably going to go to Portugal next. Someone suggested Portugal. I go check that out. So just travel, and then I do a lot of podcasts, and just other than that, just drink water and mind my own business. That's it.
There we go. Listen, listen. As a health advocate myself, if everyone take away a lot of things from this, but drink water is definitely one. We don't do enough of that.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely wanted to first salute you for all that you've done. That directly or indirectly, everyone listening has benefited from your service, your example, your willingness to step out on our behalf and do things that will benefit us, even though a lot of us may not be courageous enough to do so or may not be in the position to do so.
Right. Sure.
So I definitely salute you and thank you for that. And I also, certainly encourage you as you continue your run and all the great things that you'll do. And I thank you for being here and sharing. Any final thoughts, any final word or last quote that you'd like to share, maybe from one of your big influences or key people in your life?
So final word, thank you for having me here again. Great venue. It was a great opportunity, good conversation. I enjoyed it. So this is important. I think it's good. These are the type of conversations we need in the community to allow people to kind of see different things, create different ideas, and maybe get stuck out of different modes. The only final thought I could have, I don't know verbatim, but I always like to recommend, there's a quote, I think it's Theodore Roosevelt, "The man in the arena." Something to the effect, it's not the critic that counts, it's essentially the man in the arena, the one who's had endured through sweat and blood and tears. They'll never know like the low place of someone that's never even tried, pretty much. I think that's not the quote, but just if you go look up the man in the arena, it's my favorite quote. I have it hanging on my wall in my office. Been looking at that since I was probably like 10th grade. So anytime I kind of get down and feeling kind of like out of it, and I just want to like, I quit. I look at that quote and it gives me a lot of motivation. And then the only other thing I'd say is I know for me through this process, I could say, and you'll probably understand this, it's been some of my closest brothers that have been my biggest supporters, win, lose, or draw. No matter what's been said about me or whatever, they always make sure they ask me first. They're always checking up on me, sending me text messages, encouragement. And they donate in spirit, and they donate with dollars. And so I send a huge shout out to those people that have done that for me. And I feel like this experience I've learned that it's been difficult, but I have a great support system, a wonderful support system. I feel like we are second to none. And it's been a blessing to have that. And hopefully one day my son will understand that too. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Well, listen, best of luck to you. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your service, and hope to have you back soon to talk about what the next chapters between now and then have brought.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, take care.